Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kelby Bachman, and please welcome the next guest on our show, Dylan Carew. So Dylan is from Tiffin, Iowa, and he went on to become a 4-time state place winner and 2-time state champion for Iowa City West. He was on some of the toughest teams the Trojans have ever produced. Dylan wrestled at the University of Iowa, but unfortunately, injuries cut his career short. After competing, Dylan entered the coaching space. With the support of his staff and parents, he's built one of the top wrestling clubs in the nation, Big Game Wrestling Club. He also does landscaping, lawn care, snow removal, etc. on the side. So hit him up. It's Carew Landscaping if you're in the North Liberty area, and he will for sure get you taken care of. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy Dylan Carew. In the heart of West Union, Iowa, lies a hidden gem in Euphoria Coffee. Owned by local residents Nicole and Shane Havenstreit, they source everything they can from local vendors. From hot and iced drinks, to savory breakfast burritos, to baked goods, to botany tea, and even homemade waffles, Euphoria Coffee is a place your entire family can enjoy. You can find more information at drinkeuphoriacoffee2go.com or visit their Facebook page. And we also have a special gift just for you. Next time you stop in, you can get a free baked good with a $20 purchase. Just mention the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. Euphoria Coffee. Our purpose is deeper than coffee. I drove past actually just the other day. I have a goddaughter and she turned 5 and her birthday party was like at the it's like a gymnastics park.
Oh yeah.
That's like right behind Big Game.
Yeah, at the oh geez, I can see it. I can't think of the name of it right now.
Yeah, I
can
drove
see
past
the building. Synergy.
I looked over. Yes, Synergy. Yep, I looked over.
Yep.
I'm like, Big Game. I'm like, can I go tour that real quick? And they're like, oh no, we got to do the birthday party. So,
Yeah.
but I noticed I wanted to ask who Tom is. It Lepich?
Lepic. Tom Lepic. Yeah.
Who's Tom Lepic?
So Tom is he was a old West High coach. He actually wrestled at Iowa back in the day. Then he was the head coach at Iowa City West for a long time, and then he became a very successful real estate developer and just realtor in our area. And he always supported wrestling and specifically West High and whatnot. And so like when I was in high school and everything, he helped all of us kids out. So when we needed somebody to name the room after here and we needed a financial push to get things going, I went to him to sell him the naming rights of the gym because I knew he would support wrestling in our area.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Is he still around?
Oh yeah. Yep. So he's a busy guy. He's into horse racing and wrestling like crazy. He's actually going to go to Croatia with us for Felicity's World Championships in 2 weeks, but he got some award that he's going to have to stay behind and do for this horse racing thing.
Dang. That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But good for him. But yeah, I saw the name on there. I'm like, gosh, I got to ask him because I just had no idea.
Yep.
But cool. I think it's also cool that, you named it after somebody who may not be as known. We're having a conversation about him because, he's not this as well known. I mean, I'm sure you could have named it after quite a few people in the wrestling community that some people already knew. But I think it's cool that it's Tom Lepic.
Yeah, he's like I said, he's been in wrestling, man, for 50 plus years over in this area that he's really meant a lot to our community. I can tell you that in a lot of different ways.
I guess I should say, I'm sure a lot of people know who he is. I don't want to downplay him, but I guess I just, I didn't know. And so when I saw Tom Lepic, I was like, okay. But cool. Yeah. So the whole complex is named after Tom?
So yeah, so we have this is like the Tom Lepic Wrestling Complex is what we
Uh,
call it,
yeah,
and obviously big games hosted out of here.
yeah,
Coach Lepic's got some grandkids that come here and stuff like that, and our families are really close. We work together on a lot of things.
yeah. Okay, cool. How did you land in North Liberty?
So I grew up in Tiffin, right on Highway 6. That's where the farm that I grew up on, and that's where our business was until 2005. My dad sold that ground, and we moved our shop to Iowa City, and we were there until 2019. And in 19, actually, a kid I was coaching whose dad was like, "Hey, did you know that that building is for sale up off of the interstate?" And we were like, "Yeah, we looked at it. It's just too much money, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, did you know that there's a second floor in there?" And we were like, "No." He's like, "Yeah, it'd be perfect for a wrestling room, I'm sure. Like what you're looking for." And so that was at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And by 5 o'clock, we had a purchase agreement signed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
so it moved really quick, but then
yeah.
it was just perfect because it was big open space and split down the middle that we knew that we could that we could run our business out of here and the wrestling club.
So you just purchased the top floor?
No, my family, me, my dad, and my brother, we bought the whole building.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And what business are you running out of there?
Carew Landscaping. My dad started it
Um,
in 1988, and my brother and some of our other family members help him run it today, and we got about 50 guys that work for us.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And so you were running that out of your home, then you were saying in Tiffin.
Um, yeah, so like when I grew up, like the business was at the house that I was located at, where I grew up,
Yeah.
and our shop was just right down below it. And then we moved it to Iowa City, and I still lived in Tiffin, through high school and whatnot. And then, obviously when I went to Iowa, my dad was kind of doing it on his own and with my brother and a bunch of the guys that still work here today. And then after I moved back from Montana is when I really got heavily involved with our family business.
Yeah. Landscaping. So what exactly landscaping wise do you do? Just
We
everything?
do everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're from mowing your lawn, applicating it, to putting in swimming pools and, hardscapes and everything else. We do everything in between.
Yeah. Do you drive past like I worked with a guy once who used to he worked in landscaping and he would always comment on the lines. We drive past freshly
Yeah.
mowed yards and
Mowing.
he'd be like, "Man, those lines suck."
Yeah.
Is that still something? Is that something that you do? Like,
Oh,
man,
yeah,
those lines.
definitely. Yeah, you definitely have that, you know what I mean? Where you're like, or like, the most famous thing for anybody like us is like if I'm driving with my wife, I'm like, "Oh, we did that house. Oh, we did that
Yeah,
house."
yeah, yeah.
And I know it drives her nuts because she doesn't care at all, but I'm like, I could tell you like the year and everything. You know.
Wow. Dang, and you have 50 guys. I mean, this is no small
No,
operation.
no, it's a pretty good size operation. And that's probably like the biggest we are during the year. Most of the time we're probably high 30s to low 40s. But during the summer months, when we have wrestlers from the club or, a bunch of our college kids will come back and work for us during the summer and whatnot. We get summer help and then, we start getting a little bit more lean and mean through the fall.
Yeah. What do you like to do most about landscaping? Like, do you like to mow the lawns? Do you like to, put up the retaining walls? I know that's a little more laborious or laborious,
Yeah.
but it still looks nice at the end of the day when you're done. You're like, man, that I did that. That looks nice.
I like our hardscape stuff. I mean, to be honest, the funnest part about our job is getting to work with dudes that we've been around for forever.
Yeah.
Or like our friends. We got a bunch of friends and family that work here now. Like guys that coach with us at big game coach, work here and whatnot. So honestly, the best part of our job is like the morning and the afternoon, like when we all are standing in the shop BSing, but I like our hardscape projects are, they're the coolest things that we do,
Yeah.
transform an entire area into something, pretty awesome.
Yeah. Do you work mostly with like commercial or residential?
Uh, we're about 50-50, I would
Really?
say. Yeah.
Hmm. I don't know why I'm kind of like shocked by that. I figured, I guess typically you kind of really sway one way or the other, like, we're more
Most
residential, but we'll do.
Yeah, most people do. I think that we're just diversified enough and have enough guys that we can kind of do everything. We
Mhm.
still stay in people's yards, by mowing and doing some of those things that maybe don't make as much money these days, but it
Mhm.
leads to doing more residential services, for people and remodel type stuff and whatnot. And it's just good advertising to be in the neighborhoods. But
Yeah.
then, and it leads to a lot of snow contracts, but then we do a lot of big commercial type stuff too. So, you know, just basically rolling with whatever is coming in that year.
Yeah. So it sounds like as I feel like a lot of landscape companies do, like during the winter, you do snow removal and things
Yeah.
like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Snow's a big deal for us.
Really?
We we send out a ton of guys for snow in the winter.
Do you like that? Do you care much for snow removal?
I love snow in general, and I like the cold weather, so I don't mind it at all.
Yeah.
Now, when I was a kid, I used to think going and doing snow removal with my dad was like cool, right? Because we got to
Yeah.
get up in the middle of the night and go, and then, miss school sometimes, or school is already canceled and you're already awake, go coyote hunting or something like that. But the older I get, it's not as much fun to get up in the
Yeah.
middle of the night. But
Yeah.
the first snow of the year is always exciting. It's fun coming in, and we'll have the better part of 100 guys out for snow.
Whoa.
So yeah, a lot of the time. So like, with all the people that are helping us, and so you get to come in the middle of the night and you get to see all the trucks, all the trucks, getting gassed up and ready to roll. It's pretty neat.
I can understand that. Like while everyone else is sleeping, you got this group of guys, especially 100 of you, or you have upwards of 100 and you got all these guys with one common purpose who are, you could be tired, but you all have like this really good attitude and you're just raring to go and you just go out and do your job. That I can understand that would be a pretty cool experience. You have all these guys with one common goal,
Yeah, it's
that.
cool when all the equipment goes out and everything all at once, and you know, it's so calm a lot of the times when it's snowing in the middle of the night that it's kind of nice. I don't know.
Yeah. Is there, not to call anybody out, but have you had a couple guys like from your club who was like, yeah, I'll come help you, I'll come do snow removal or I'll come landscape, and then they get out there and they were just kind of maybe kind of a dud. You're like, geez.
Oh, dude, you interviewed Hunter, didn't you, Garvin?
Yeah. Ah, Hunter. Okay, he was one
Garvin,
of them.
Garvin wasn't a dud, but they can tell you some stories.
Really?
Let's just say that I used to be harder on those boys on a job site than I was in a wrestling room.
Really?
Yeah. We had a few
Wow.
talks about how fast I wanted to see a rake moving, that I didn't want to see it stop until that were a little serious.
Yeah.
But we've had some kids, man, that have come to work for us in the summer, and where you're like, hey buddy, obviously you've never done this before, but like, this is how we make money, so
Mm-hmm.
like we need you to step it up. And you have some of those talks, and it's good for them because they realize, like the real life stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have some kids that come to work for us that are exactly what you think they would be, and they
Mm-hmm.
work circles around grown men, in some senses, but we have kids. Shoot, we have a kid, Jordan Schmidt, that wrestled at Solon for us the last 5 or 6 years or whatever. But that kid, I have to tell him no, like, hey, you can't come in because you have, wrestling or school tomorrow or something like that. And that kid just wanted to make money, and he'd be in it all the time and work hard. And, like I said, he's probably worked for us for 3 or 4 years now, and all the guys here love him. And,
Mm-hmm.
we have another kid, that same thing around here. So it's fun to have the kids around for work, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure like it's probably both fun on both ends of the spectrum. You have a kid like Jordan Schmidt who's just a dog who just comes in and just works his butt off and enjoys it and you just love having him around. But it's also probably kind of fun to have somebody like Hunter
who, yeah, may not be a dud, but you can kind of give him some crap, like
Oh, yeah.
kind of rag on him a little bit for the not the lack of effort, because obviously he's working hard, but you know, it just makes for a fun stories, I guess.
Oh yeah. I mean, we used to have wrestling matches. My dad would have to tell me like, "Hey, you can't be letting those guys wrestle on the job site and things like that." And then I have to remind my dad that I remember when I was a kid and him wrestling guys for their paychecks and things like that. I'm like, "Oh yeah, where do you think I learned it from?" Type thing.
Yeah. Speaking of your dad, did you get were you able to open that? I don't know if you even attended that text I sent you last night about
I
the,
started I started to look through it, but it was later when I saw it, and I was already
yeah,
in bed with my 2-year-old.
yeah,
Um, so no, I didn't get a chance to completely look through it.
yeah.
Um,
Gosh, it was from like 1983 championships, and I saw Jeff Carew in there, and I was like, whoa.
when he was
I,
wrestling for Loris.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I thought it
yeah.
was kind of a cool blast from the past there.
I'll
I think you
have
went,
to, yeah,
yeah.
I'll have to check that out now. I wasn't completely sure. I figured it had something to do with that, but
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
funny because like I grew up, with my dad obviously introducing me to wrestling, but like he didn't really talk a whole lot about like his wrestling or anything like that. I just met people that knew him from those days or whatever. And, he was an all right wrestler in high school and then, wrestled in college a little bit, but, really didn't talk about it a whole lot, but always introduced us to the people from his past that were, really important and influential wrestling people. And, so it kind of that's what got us rolling,
Hmm.
it, uh, it's definitely interesting.
Have you sort of over the years started to talk to him more about it, or have you kind of gained some knowledge about his
I
wrestling?
mean, I know about it, but like it's one of those things like, I know like highlighted things for him like that he enjoyed or low lighted things, It's
Hmm.
kind of weird because like sometimes I think about that. Like I don't talk a lot about certain things, with myself. And like I don't my dad's like a dude that I don't know, he just not live in the past and talk about his own wrestling. Like when we
Hmm.
were kids, like he just made it clear, like, hey, I didn't succeed in wrestling, but it's not about like I don't want you guys to be good because of that type
Hmm.
thing. So I feel like that's why maybe he like kind of shied away from some of that was just so it didn't ever feel like, he was trying to make us better than what he was type thing.
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah. He went. I think the one I sent you went. I think he went 1-2 at that national tournament. But
Hey, not to tell him. DMP,
yeah.
we call that a Dippin' Dots kid in our club.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Where did you get that? How'd you make that up? A Dippin'
I
Dots
used
kid.
I mess with kids, man, and try to make
Hmm.
light of like sometimes these people, man, parents and kids, they take this stuff so crazy. I'll be like, it's okay to make fun of like getting beat or something like right. Like I always tell people, like for me, like anybody that knows me, like if one of our kids loses like a big match or something crazy, like, the first thing I do is make fun of them about it, like right away. You know what I mean? For me, like healing is with laughter, right? Like that's
Hmm.
just kind of how I am. So like, but then there's another side of it, right? Where like parents like, coddle their kid and whatever. And so like I started messing around and I'm like, oh well, don't worry, like you guys, when you get beat, Jimmy, like you'll go to the stands and your parents will, they'll feel bad for you and they'll go buy you some Dippin' Dots to make your day better. And so then, and I'm like, a tie dye near fall T-shirt at Tulsa, something like that, just kind of joking around. And then it just stuck. Where now people
Hmm.
are like, we had a kid a couple years ago beat a kid at the AAU state tournament, and this is funny, but maybe not one of my prouder moments. But I don't know. Maybe it is proud. I don't know. This kid beats this other kid in like maybe the blood round to like place at AAU state, and he turns and looks at me and goes, "Another Dippin' Dots kid," and I'm like, "Oh my god." I'm like, don't say that. don't say that ever again out loud in front of anybody except for when we're in practice. Like, you can't do that. And this kid was young. Like, I mean, he might have been like, whatever the youngest group is there, like what, third grade? I don't know. But it was funnier than heck. And so now, like, yeah, like we mess around. I tell the kids all the time, like, the only way you can eat Dippin' Dots at a tournament is when you win it. So, like, now that's a
There you
thing.
go.
Like,
Yeah.
our kids will win it or place or whatever, and then they'll go get ice cream at the end, And I don't care if they eat ice cream during the tournament. It's just me joking around.
Yeah. I'm thinking though, as you're saying this, is that sometimes not how do I say this? When you have a kid who loses a heartbreaking match, and the first thing you do is kind of joke around with them, like I understand, like for us, like it sounds like a good idea, but has it ever bit you in the ass a little bit, where like they come off and they're like, not now, or like they're fuming, and you're trying to poke
Oh,
fun, but like,
yeah. Yeah, not necessarily like in that sense of like where it's been untimed. Usually
that's the good word, yeah.
I'll use to like, wait until like the first practice back or something. But like,
Okay.
I remember two specific like losses that are, pretty well known even. One was Robert Avila in the finals. Losing his four-state title, when he was winning and whatever. And I remember that he was pretty upset after that match. And that, but I just told him, I'm like, this doesn't define you, man. I'm like,
Mhm.
one match doesn't define you. I'm like, people eventually will, like, right now, if people are excited and celebrating like that they just saw something crazy, like it's not that they're against you necessarily, it's just that they witnessed something. And I'm like, and someday
Yeah.
you're gonna be remembered because of that. Like, yeah, okay, you'd be remembered for, winning your fourth, but at the same time, like, people saw something great that night and you were involved with that. And like the hard work that you did in your life is what puts you in a position to be in a storied moment like that that's remembered. And like, only so many people will care about who won or lost that match, 20 years from now, but it's not going to be that important to you, or hopefully it won't be that important, at
Mhm.
that point in your life. And the same thing with Tate and Actaborn after the Gabe Arnold match. I remember Tate was pretty upset, but Tate handled everything super well, and so did Robert. Like, Robert was laughing and playing video games, you know, within a couple hours after that night. And I remember that that's something I was always proud of. And then, on Sunday night, Robert came to club practice,
Mhm.
and that said a lot to the rest of our kids. Like, we're not going to cry and hide in the shadows and pretend like it's anything more than what it should be. Robert came to club practice that next night, and um, I thought that just said so much for his character, for his family, and for his younger siblings that were watching him. And before I roll back to the Tate thing, Robert last year was there for his brother to
Yeah.
win a state title. And I remember that I went down to the and found Robert right after Justin won. And, I told him how much I loved him and that how proud I was because his brother doesn't win a state title last year if Robert still was hung up on that state championship match that he lost, and that if he didn't want to be in that building. I know guys that are like that, are like, I'm never going back to that building, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because you lost a wrestling match.
Mhm.
I mean, grow up, like at some point, like, yeah, I mean, like, this hurts, like, whatever, but like there's a lot worse loss in life than
Mhm.
losing a wrestling match. And as we all get older, we all understand that. But trying to help these guys in those moments is so big, right? And so Robert did a good job. And then when Tate lost to Gabe Arnold in that type match, I told him the same thing. Like, we were standing right down in the tunnel right there, and I said, I said it's more impactful for you to stand out here where people can see you and put a smile on your face, even though you don't want to smile right now. I said there's a lot of kids in this building that are looking up to you at this exact moment, and what you do in defeat is the same thing. And like anybody that knows Tate's a good-hearted kid, and like, I know more than got the words out. Like, I'm saying this, and this kid comes up over the rail and asks Tate for his autograph, and a picture after he lost. You know what I mean? And so he does it, and I told him, I'm like, see, that's what I'm saying, man. I'm like, people don't care. Like in a moment, you know what I mean? They see you lose, but they also got to see something great, and
Mhm.
Doug Schwab always told me this, like, people are, who you think they are, they're gonna be good to you type thing. And like Tate, like that was an important thing right there. It was like he saw like this little kid still thought the same thing of him, regardless of the fact that he lost. And like, someday, like, the same thing is like if a guy makes the NCAA finals, right, like, and loses, nobody goes, oh well, he lost in the NCAA finals. They're like, oh, that dude was an NCAA finalist. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It just takes some time for people to change the narrative and to figure it out. So,
Yeah.
but those were two big losses that I remember that were great. And then another one with Tate was he lost Super 32 finals one year, and we got in the bus to go home, and it's a long drive. That year was
Mhm.
really really long because our bus broke down. But we drove 45 miles an hour all the way from Greensboro to Iowa City. It took a
Oh
long
my
time.
gosh.
Took a long time, but that year Tate got in the bus, and he was just looking at me, and I'm like, hey, I'm like, okay, you lost. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, you're Super 32 finalist. I'm like, and we got an 18-hour ride home. I'm like, it's what we always talk about. Like, the car ride home can't be longer than the car ride there. Like, it has to be fun. I'm like, I don't want, don't let this match tonight ruin your entire trip where we can laugh and joke and everything the whole way home. And so, and in an instant, he was smiling and laughing. And, I think that's important for your character and your development as a young man, for them to
Mhm.
understand, like, you have to compartmentalize some of this, you know.
How did you learn this? I mean, probably through your own experiences, but like this is good stuff. And I'm like, geez, where did this all manifest for you to, you
Like
know?
that, a lot of it, man, is just simply from my experience and from being around, a lot of different people. And then, like I said, I mean, my dad did such a good job with us um, as kids of helping understand so much and explaining different situations and things like that. And then I had other great coaches. Pablo Ubasa was my kids club coach. We were always around Dan Gable. Like,
Mhm.
and then Coach Zaleski and the Steiners and the Branses, and then we, Mark Ryland was my high school coach. So like you get to see a lot of different people growing up. Willie Gadsden was another guy, that was always around. Johnny Galloway. I mean, the list goes on and on. Brad Smith was, involved. C.T. Campbell. Guys like from a young age that I got to see and hear talk, that were impactful into a lot of the things that I thought about. And and then the kids that I grew up with, you see different experiences and how everybody handles things. And then we talked about a lot of that, even when we were in high school and whatnot, loss and how each other dealt with it and things like that. And if somebody didn't deal with it well, like in our friend group, we were going to get your butt called out. That's for sure. That's putting
Mhm.
it lightly.
Yeah.
So, just a lot of that. And then, now, I mean, shoot, I've been coaching for, you know, 12, I'm trying to think, about 12 years now.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
you learn a lot. Uh, when I was younger, I didn't do so well maybe in some of those positions.
Hmm.
And you learn over time. Rylan told me one time, like, he's like, if you're that emotional about something, he's like, you're not going to last that long in coaching. You gotta learn to relax a little bit, and not take it so hard, when your kids lose. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I'm like, feels
Hmm.
like, you put it, you just want it so bad for those kids because you see how hard they work. And so, but that's something that I talk about now. And like, even, recently had a discussion with, a very high level, coach, um, that we were just talking about not emotionally charging every situation, like that you can't, like, some kids respond better to it when you pick it up, some kids don't, but you really have to understand the individual, and that helps a lot, including right after loss. Like there's some kids that I've coached, man, that like you just don't even approach them. Like you just, you hand them their stuff and you give them 5-10 minutes, maybe longer in some cases. But some of those guys, you got to talk them off the ledge a little bit too. And I coached a kid recently in the last couple of years that I learned that, and it was a different. A different challenge in my wrestling or my coaching career, because like typically where normally I would tell a kid, hey, no, you listen to me right now. Like I'm not playing your game. You're not gonna
Mhm.
walk away from me, do anything like that. And so like me and this kid, we just had a talk. I'm like, hey, I get it. Like you're not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that, but like I demand your respect the same way you demand it from me. Um, that's how it works. But I'm like, there's no good that's happening in me trying to talk to you right after a match. I'm like, because you don't hear it.
Mhm.
You're so, so wound up in whether you won or lost. I'm like, that I gotta kind of take a step back from you for like 10 minutes and then we'll talk. And once we did that, like it was really good, and
Mhm.
that specific individual taught me a lot in coaching. I can tell you that.
Yeah, isn't it? I don't want to say funny, but um, interesting. Like it doesn't matter how long you're going to be in this, you're going to have instances where you're like, wow, I've never dealt with that before. You
Oh
know?
yeah, yeah. What's funny is like even if it's challenging, I
Mhm.
find myself after the fact being like, man, I appreciate that. Like
Yeah.
that, because after you do something for a long, long time, if it some of it is repetitive, right? But like
Mhm.
individuals that show up, that's what you want. Like you want to see the diversity within inside of the kids you're coaching, and a great coach will tap into that. And
Mhm.
you got to know the good and bad characteristics of these kids, to help connect with them. And in some cases, you share that. Like if like let's say that I didn't do this right in my career. That's one of the if I see that out of a kid, that's one of the first things I'm willing to tell them is, hey, dude, look, I did the same thing right
Mhm.
here, right now. You can hear it. If there's somebody in the room that lived through that with me, I'll call myself out right in front of them. You know what I mean? So that they can confirm that I'm not just blowing smoke at you.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like that, I'm the same way as you. I just want you to be better than me. That's it. You know what I mean? I'm trying to help you. And so, yeah, I mean, it's good.
How long would you have given yourself? So, hypothetically, you're the coach and you're also the wrestler. So, this is high school Dylan Carew. How long would you have had to give yourself before you approached yourself and talked to you after a loss?
Mm, I don't know.
Were,
You,
were you
I
one of
mean,
those kids that
I
needed some time?
maybe I'm gonna have selective memory. I definitely know there was a couple times where my high school coaches, Mark Ryland and Matt Orton and a couple of these other guys had to tell me, basically shut up and listen. But
Hmm.
I think I did a good job probably of listening in those moments. I think I was always pretty coachable, but there's definitely I remember some things that I could have done better, but I was pretty approachable, I would say.
Yeah,
Um, respect is a big thing, so um,
yeah.
I probably listened a little bit better. I don't know. That's funny. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, and it's always easier in hindsight, after a loss like that, especially because I feel like there's sometimes where you would expect, and this is just a hypothesis, I guess, but like you would expect a kid after a loss to react a certain way, and then he reacts totally different. Like, okay, he loses in the state finals, you expect him to be way more upset than like, let's say somebody lost in the quarterfinals. Like,
Yeah.
which one would be quote unquote more devastating? Well,
Yeah.
it depends on the kid, and so like it's just interesting how you really, like you're saying, you have to really know the kid to understand maybe how they're going to react to any loss at any
Yeah.
stage.
And like for me, man, it was if I lost, period, it was something that was gonna like seriously bother me, right?
Yeah.
I I had a lot of self belief, and that's something that we coach now. And I think, I share this thing with our kids, like a delusional belief. I think that's
Mhm.
the people that have that in themselves, like they're the ones that, like when they lose, you can see like the pain in their eyes that they don't even understand how it happened, like, or how it
Mhm.
could happen. Right. Like, and I've only coached a couple kids that I would say like have that like delusional belief in themselves where like you see it like, the same thing that I kind of thought, believed was just like, how do I even give up points, let alone lose a match? Like, and I've
Mhm.
coached a few kids that you can see it in their eyes that they just don't even understand how someone could beat them.
Mhm.
And so that's a cool thing though,
Yeah.
to see kids like that.
Yeah. Um, when did you, I know you started wrestling young. Um, and it sounds like from what I gathered, you took to it right away. Was there ever a time where like you didn't like wrestling? And maybe it was even just a moment, but like where you were just even contemplating not like, "Ah, I don't like this anymore."
Oh, I think like no matter what, anybody that tells you no, they're a liar. They
Yeah.
never they never went down the road hard enough. I can
Mhm.
tell you that.
Yeah.
Like every single wrestler that, has like gone to depths, like that it takes to be really, really good in our sport, they definitely know some of that hate. Like,
Mhm.
I believe, there's a like this Nate and Nick Diaz thing, that like one of them, this quote where they're talking about like to be great at something, you'll hate it first. Like you'll have to suffer like to
Mhm.
get so good at it that there's gonna be some hate involved with that, right? But I started when I was 4 years old and I loved wrestling all the way through the end of my competitive career. That was probably the only time that maybe, and it wasn't nothing to do with wrestling. It was just like maybe feeling like the world wasn't fair type thing.
Yeah.
Over my injuries, and I don't shy away from that. I probably didn't handle that the best always. Especially the way that I was just sad, man.
Yeah.
I cared about this thing for a long time, and so it was one of those things where like, but I didn't hate it, right? Like I
Mhm.
still wanted to be around wrestling, and that's how the club ended up, coming about. But like, I genuinely I remember tough times, but I don't
Mhm.
ever remember like being like, man, I want to quit. I hate this. I'm sure guaranteed my dad would probably laugh, but I'm sure at some point I said those magic words, right? Like, every
Mhm.
stupid kid probably does it
Yeah.
one point or another, right? But like, um, no, man, I mean, wrestling's been so influential and so important in my life since I was, 4 years old.
Mhm.
And, I just turned 34 the other day, and I'm still getting to do things in the sport of wrestling that make me happy. And, um, getting to chase certain things. I told my wife here recently, when Felicity made the senior world team, I'm like, it's crazy because like I was thinking about it. I'm like, 30 years ago, when I was 4 years old, I was
Mhm.
convinced that I was going to be a world champion, right? Like, and that didn't happen,
Mhm.
and never even got to, compete in that tournament, right? Like most people don't. But now, 30 years later, as a coach, you're going to get to be in it. And like, to me, like that just shows, I don't know, there's something I'm proud of, that
Mhm.
I was thinking about that, like 30 years, man. 30 years ago, I remember thinking like that, and then 30 years later, like getting to watch somebody else, chase that thing that you get to help with is
Mhm.
so crazy. And like I said, it's something that I'm proud of for sure. Um, but it's something that I hope our kids see too. There's a lot of kids. There's a few kids in specific I think that have come through our club already that didn't make it, in the sense of like that people are going to remember their name for their credentials or something like that, but they're going to make really good coaches.
Mhm.
Um, and we have some of those guys here, um, at Big Game. And I just did a Win magazine interview the other day, and I said, you look at some of the best clubs, and specifically in Iowa. I mean, our best clubs are ran by guys that, you know, credential wise didn't make it, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, however people want to say that, right? Like they weren't, in Iowa, our expectations are NCAA champions, All Americans, world and Olympic champions, and medalists. And you know what? It's good reminders for, all of us to, look at how many great high school coaches there is. Look at how many good college coaches, weren't national champions. Look at
Yeah.
how many, clubs in the United States right now that are doing amazing things are led by guys, that are just giving back. Like that's an important thing.
Yeah. Did you ever, well, for one, I'll say, 30 years ago, when you said you were going to be a world champion, you know, you didn't maybe anticipated being this aspect, but you can still be a world champion, you'd be a world champion coach,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I think, participating in it, in any sense is important. Like when
yeah.
you look at it from, that standpoint of like you're taking, this route to try to get to some of this stuff, and um, I've now been able to, travel around the world and see different places that I wouldn't have been able to see if I wasn't coaching. And, you know, that kind of goes back to like how do you handle loss and things like that. Like
Mhm.
if you quit, or if like you just think that one thing is the end all, like you're never gonna get to where you were supposed to go. Like
Yeah.
that's something that, and maybe I've always thought about that too, is like is there, is that loser talk to like people who are like, oh well, it was meant to happen type thing. Like I don't know if I believe any of that, but I do believe like you just roll with the punches and end up
Mhm.
where you end up, and like keep moving forward. And like that's what we tell our kids, like wrestling's going to be over for you at some point,
Yeah.
like competitively. So like who are you going to be when wrestling, competitively is over? Hopefully it's somebody that, learned a lot, and is able to take those things into the next phases of your life. And if you coach, share your experiences, but be, be as good as you can be, along the way, because it's a short ride. I mean, and wrestling can be a vehicle for you. It can be something that can move your life forward, in a lot of positive manner. So don't get hung up on, like these short term wins and losses. And, because like you said, like we just said, 30 years from now, who knows?
Mhm.
You might get to go, to the senior world championships. It just might be in a different capacity.
Yeah. And it can in your case, like you can even attest to it. I mean, it may end before you're ready for it to end,
Oh yeah.
or before you
Yeah,
thought it
definitely.
was going to end, you know. Um, and also you can attest to not only how to handle loss, but adversity. I mean, there was quite a few times where you dealt with not necessarily a loss, but a physical injury, where
Yeah,
that, I mean,
setbacks.
that, yeah, and that's almost as devastating as a loss, and how you handle that is mentally also just as important, um, as losing a match.
Yeah, I'd say
So,
it's harder, to be honest.
really.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something that, like, in any athletics, like people probably don't talk about enough, or like that it's not coached enough. Is like, competitive sports injuries are very, very hard on people. You know what I mean? And like, so like that's something like when one of our kids gets hurt, like, I'm trying to check in with them, trying to make sure,
Mhm.
like, hey, are you good? Like, because I know, like, it's hard enough, like, to not be able to do something. It's harder to be hurt and be trying to come back to do what you want. And there's a lot of doubt whether or not you're going to be what you were before these injuries, da da da, all these different things, that factor into it. And so helping, through that is important, very important, I think.
Mhm.
And then you're going to have kids that, hopefully none of us have to do it, but like, there was people that told me, like, you should be done. Like,
Mhm.
this is too much, think about the rest of your life type thing. And, hopefully we don't ever have to coach somebody that you have to have that conversation with. And thank God that there's people strong enough to do that.
Yeah. What's it like wrestling with no ligaments in your knee?
Man, I don't, not easy. It hurts.
Like, are you able to bend it? Like, what? I mean, for one, I guess my first question is why are you even doing it? You know, but for two, I guess like yeah, what kind of is it? Just a dead leg there? Like I'm just trying to understand.
Um,
Like if I'm watching, we watch Spencer Lee do it. We watch some of these guys.
yeah, Spencer
They're
Lee is
doing it.
it's just literally absolutely insane. Like I mean, I sent him a message actually after he had surgery on the double because me and him I think are the only two people to ever have that surgery at the University of Iowa. We both
Wow.
had double ACL surgery at the same time, but Spencer winning an NCAA title is just like it's like having gone through that like so many times and to know what that kid has done and how he's recovered and came back in Olympic silver. I mean, I literally just couldn't give him enough credit for like what he's done because like
Mhm.
that is so difficult. I mean, wrestling injured at all, is so hard, right?
Mhm.
But like that's a very significant injury. I mean, some people never come back from one, ACL injury, let alone, multiples. So, and injury wise, like what's it like, each case is different, right? Like, but it's hard, I wrestled my senior year of high school pretty much with the whole year with the torn ACL, MCL, meniscus. Um, and that was difficult. I remember that. And then it just kept happening in
Yeah.
college. And so like for me, to be completely honest with you, it became something that I was like almost used to. And
Yeah.
now, it's just something that I deal with. I had another one a few years ago.
Seriously?
Oh yeah, I think 4 years ago I had my neck, elbow, knee, and shoulder all done in 4 months. Just
Oh my gosh.
a month separated of all of them.
Is it just the way you wrestle or what? You
I
not
don't
drink enough
know.
milk as a kid? I don't know. I mean,
Apparently I drank too much pop. I think I don't know. And then I just don't know. One of those things that unfortunately, like the injury bug, has been something that I've dealt with for a long time, and thankfully we've had kids, and I don't ever think it had anything to do with like training or anything like that
Mhm.
because like we really weren't. It wasn't that crazy, you know what I mean? In the sense of like, I never really got you know tired or hurt from being tired or like worn down going into practices, things like that. It just happened. And thankfully now, like for kids that I've coached, we haven't had that many injuries and, nothing that's been super, super significant yet
Yeah.
um, in a kid's life, which is, really good.
Yeah. So if you can think about it, how many surgeries in total have you had?
A lot. um,
You just walk in probably the university and they're like, "Hey, Dylan, what are you getting done
oh,
today?"
there's definitely a few people that definitely know me up there. Yeah, from like that. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, there was the one year there where it was every month for 4 months that I was in there, and I don't, I know how many like different operations I've
Mm-hmm.
had. And it's well over a dozen.
Jeez.
Um, but I have had 6 ACLs, I think now, which
Wow.
is crazy.
Between the two of them?
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna think.
Wow.
Uh, right? Three, five. I've had five.
Uh,
Five ACLs.
Sheesh.
Yep.
I mean, mentally, like we talked a little bit earlier. I mean, the first one's obviously devastating, but like, is it more devastating the more times it happens?
Yeah, but
In
it,
a
it
way.
also it also like almost becomes more like realistic. Like the first time it's mind blowing. And
Hmm.
it you know, um it hurts when it happens and
Hmm.
so but like it's a unique injury too because like part of your leg will start to take over and like your hamstring will start acting as an ACL eventually
Huh.
to help give you some stabilization. So like there's that like but like the initial injury is awful. And usually you tear cartilage, and that's what hurts more than anything is those meniscus tears, especially like if they, get the bucket where it's flat back, and caught in there. That's when you see people like grabbing their toe and like popping it and like complaining of, real bad stuff. But, the more times it happened, it was just like, it's more believable each time that it happened again, but it's also more devastating each time, right? Like,
Right.
the last one was when I was coaching and, just showing a move and pop, it's just gone,
Mhm.
and I've been told, several times probably need to, keep slowing down more and more, but, it's hard.
Yeah. Has it ever happened on the job site? It sounds like it hasn't, but like, have you ever like,
No, I've
no?
never been hurt. Well, I've been hurt on a job site, but not from like one of my athletic injuries.
Gotcha.
No. I tell you the worst one that I had was my neck. Um, was a I had 2 discs replaced in my neck, and that was pretty
Jeez.
awful. The pain that was involved with that for several months. The people in and around the club, and my wife could tell you how much pain I was in for that one. That's one that I wouldn't want to do ever again. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
What why do you keep doing this? I mean, I know that seems like kind of maybe a silly question because obviously you love the sport, but I
Yeah.
mean, man,
You're not
you're
the only
third,
person that's asked me that. Like, they're like, "You're 34 and you're falling
right?
apart," and I think, for me, it's just like, what else would I, I'm sure I know I have a lot of things that I could do, so, like, I don't want that to come off the wrong way, but, like,
Yeah.
it's just something that it is a large part of me, like, it's in
Yeah.
me. I'm happier when I'm in a wrestling room. I'm happier, like, when I'm around it and when I get to see it, on a day-to-day basis, and, now I have 2 boys of my own, that are, 2.5 and almost 1. I got, a nephew. I got nieces, that, who knows, maybe they'll wrestle. I don't know, but like, I hope, that my kids want to wrestle, and, that,
Mhm.
will probably be, the end someday, I'm guessing, is when they're done, but that's another
Mhm.
20 years from now. So we'll
Yeah.
see. I gotta get 20 more,
Okay.
20 more years out of this. And so, like, you know, being smart. No, I definitely don't. I don't wrestle live that much anymore, like ever,
Mhm. Yeah.
unless somebody somehow can talk me into it. And if I do, usually it's with 106 and 113 pounders.
Yeah. Smart.
I,
Smart
I'm
guy.
the I'm the toughest 120 pounder in our room.
Well, actually, I heard a story about an eighth grader who took you down
Yeah,
once, and I was like, "Wow, eighth grader? Are you getting rusty or what?"
Garvin, I'm assuming. Tell you that
Maybe,
story.
maybe.
Yeah. He caught me sleeping a little bit in Vegas one time, and he did. He tripped me right to my butt. And back then, I used to tell all those guys, none of you will ever take me down, ever. And that whole group of kids in and around that age, they know all too well. Like, I wouldn't just give those kids takedowns. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, um, not when it was more serious, but he did. He
Yeah.
got me like going
Wow.
around on the side of a mat in Vegas, and he called it the first takedown that I'd given up to one of them. And I'll give it to him. It was clean. He sat me right to my butt on a move that I taught him, even so.
You know,
That's his claim to fame. I'll give it to him.
yeah, yeah. Well, the thing I'll say is also, if that happens, I mean, did a light bulb like kind of flicker on like, whoa, okay, this kid like,
Oh, I've
wow, this
had
kid's
kids.
good.
I've had kids like that are like that. Like, whether you give them a takedown or they get their first real one,
Mm,
and they're like, "Oh wow, well." I remember this summer I told a kid like in the room here, I'm like that I was wrestling live. I'm like, hey, that was a real one. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you got a real takedown on me today. And he said, good for you. I'm like, that's a that's an important moment. Like, I think everybody kind of remembers like when you're wrestling your coach, and like you start to remember the days where you could start fighting back a little bit, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
um, and I think that's important for your development. I had a lot of those days with Pablo, man, where Pablo just beat the heck out of me growing up. And, I don't know what age it was, probably when I got to college where and I was bigger than Pablo by then, but like even then Pablo would still wrestle with me.
Mm.
I don't know if I could ever really beat him, but good coaches keep it that way. You don't really know if you can or if you could, but you're scoring points, but they're also, scoring points. And,
Mhm.
I think Pablo taught me that and like had to like really get a guy to a next level by just grabbing him and flowing with him and wrestling with them. And, I think it's good for your psyche too.
Yeah, yeah, especially when there's no scoreboard, so when you're starting to get a couple takedowns, you kind of lose track of how many times you've taken him down versus how many times he's taken you down. And
Yeah.
so like your confidence is like, man, I don't know what the scores are. I feel like we're even,
Yeah.
even if the scoreboard would show 20-4, it doesn't matter. Like you're
Yeah,
feeling.
exactly. You feel like
But
you're wrestling, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
That you're
yeah,
able to do something. It's good. Yeah. There's
yeah.
there's a couple kids though that we've coached now that I don't think I would wrestle with anymore.
Yeah. I
Or
bet
if
Tate's
they
one of them just because he's big. I mean,
Tate's
ooh,
big. Wyatt is really big now,
yeah.
especially going up to heavyweight. But I went me and we just did a camp out in Montana, and Wyatt and me were there, and I'll give him this too. We went. I haven't wrestled him, and if he grabs me, I'm like, stop touching me, usually. But somehow we got into it was raining, and we were doing this outdoor camp, and we started wrestling around a little bit, and it got a little more chippy, a little bit more chippy, and all of a sudden we were both wrestling full out live, and I almost got him, and then he hit me with a nice duck.
Hmm.
So that was the latest kid that I've coached to take me down was Wyatt. He ducked me pretty bad um, at our Montana camp. I was trying to hand fight and survive, protecting my legs from him,
Hmm.
and yeah, I got caught reaching.
Do you ever kind of hide these moments from your wife? Like, oh hey, Dylan, how'd practice go? Did you wrestle at all? No, 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 no. What?
Yeah,
I didn't wrestle.
definitely, definitely. She'd be like, "I don't feel sorry for you if you're wrestling." Like that's what she tell me. Like she'd be like, I don't get why you're doing this." You know what I mean? Like you just don't understand. It's like it's like I can't stop. Like you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like
yeah.
we have a couple coaches up here that would be like, "Why?" Like grab me and be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm
Hmm.
like, dude, I'm like, I can't." Like you know what I mean? Like I have to,
Hmm.
right? But I'm better about it now. Like, I mean, back then I used to wrestle, shoot basically every day. But, when I had those surgeries a few years ago, that really, I didn't do anything on the mat for, 2.5 years at least
Yeah.
of like wrestling live. And now, in the last year, I've kind of started wrestling with the kids a little bit more as I feel comfortable. I think it's important. You hear David Taylor talk about it, and like me and David were talking about it when we were in Montana, but it's important to wrestle with your guys. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's important for them to understand, like, hey, coaches still got it a little bit. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it's a good message, for the rest of the kids. You got to kind of let them know, like, hey, there's still a final boss type thing. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I don't think I have that title anymore, but you know, I'll still act like it with them.
Yeah. How did I'm sure you've been asked this, but I'm curious how the Montana connection even began. I think was it due to hunting at first?
Yeah, yep. Hunting took me out there. Well, actually,
Why Montana? Like why specifically Montana, I guess.
I did a camp out there is what happened. I met some people that were really great. And then they introduced me to some other people, and then it introduced me to more people. And then the next thing you know, I had an opportunity to go out there and ended up spending like 4 years there. And
Nice.
a lot of it with the Dagans and a
Yeah.
bunch of the other families. But it was a really good opportunity and learning experience for some other things, and it really kind of helped me close the door on some of my competitive stuff
Mm-hmm.
and just transition into the coaching world is really what it did for me.
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah. Man, Jarrett, I bet wrestling Jarrett was just difficult because he's just a
Yeah,
different, you watch him at 149 and you're like, man, he is just different than all the other 49 pounders just
yeah,
because of his length, you know?
yeah. I remember I used to tell people about him, and they'd just be like, kind of shake me off, and then especially if they saw him, they'd be like, that kid's not a wrestler.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, and he still doesn't look like it. But I've always told people that like Jarrett Dagan is as tough as they come.
Mhm.
Jarrett had some unfortunate injury stuff too, towards the end of his career that really kind of maybe put a hindrance on things, and then the COVID year when they stopped the tournament,
Yeah,
you know, that was probably as good as he'd ever been, was right then. So it would have been, if ands and buts types thing. But
yeah.
he All-American a couple times and he had a great career, but like he was just so tough, man. Like
Mhm.
I don't know, like in wrestling him, he was mean, he was long, he just didn't stop. And like what you didn't understand is like you were wrestling like two guys because you have to wrestle all that length, right?
Mhm.
Like you really have to wrestle through his whole body, and it's
Yeah.
super hard and tiring. Like that people would wrestle through it and then not understand how tired they are very quickly. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I remember a story from one of his college coaches calling me during his freshman year where he kind of started rough, and then about halfway through the year something happened in a practice, and he was like, hey, you were right. And he's like, that kid's very tough. And I'm like, yeah, he'll be all right.
Yeah, yeah. And he ended up being all right, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
but his whole family's like that though, man. They just starting with his old man, Terry Dagan, is there's only
mhm.
one of that guy in the whole world.
Yeah,
He taught those boys a lot.
yeah. I think it's awesome that you have this connection with Montana. Partially because, we don't think of Montana as like this wrestling mecca, when you think of the
Yeah,
wrestling states, Montana isn't one of them. But to have you go out there and have like a kind of a second home base, if you will, out in Montana to help promote and grow the sport in that state is awesome. It's what we need.
yeah. Well, I agree. It's been really good, man. I met some amazing people out there, including the place that we just did that camp. Those people have been so good to me. There's so many families there that helped from the start, that people really don't know how impactful they were
Yeah,
into the success of big game even in Iowa. They don't the people here don't necessarily understand, like without those people it really wouldn't be a thing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And the you know, I yeah, there's some people that don't get enough credit, that's for sure. But I don't know if they'd even want it, to be honest, or they'd
yeah.
laugh and think, that like I said. But the success here that we have, it all derives from there. I can tell you that for sure. And those initial people um, that were involved with that.
Yeah, did big game start in Montana?
So we did like right before I went to Montana. We had a summer here in
Mhm.
Iowa. We weren't really like a club. We were running practices, and
Yeah.
we had a bunch of kids wrestling for us and whatnot. And we were gonna kind of kick things up that fall. And then just things went a little bit different, and I ended up having that opportunity and went to Montana, and you know, never look back. So
Hmm.
it's kind of a unique start, here in West Branch, was that summer. And then, really, the big kick was in Montana.
How did the name Big Game come about? I love it. It's different, from just like Carew Wrestling, whatever,
Yeah.
No, no, no,
Well, that,
no shade at those names, but Big
yeah.
Game is just,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
unique.
that,
It's cool.
that is part of like why it is that is like I wanted something that somebody, what else would want someday, maybe, type thing too. And so, and I wanted to be unique.
Mhm.
I liked the colors a lot. It really had a lot to do with that. Me and some friends we liked dirt track racing, and big game tree stands. Had a pretty sweet racing team. Um, and we met the owner and whatnot a few times. He's really good friends with one of my good buddies. And we just kind of talked to him about, like, hey, what would you think if we, did this wrestling club and called it this, wouldn't be like the same thing, but like, we just don't want to end up, in trouble either.
Yeah, for sure.
We just basically told him about it. So, because we were like, we like your guys' look and everything like that. And I was like, it just goes hand in hand with what I want to do for this wrestling club, which is I want to take kids hunting and fishing and,
Mhm.
wrestling and dirt track racing and things like what I grew up doing. And so that's really what it was all about. And marketing wise, it's been great to have, the name and the colors and things have worked really well for us.
Yeah, did you design the logo or is that from them?
No, one of my buddies did. One of my teammates, Jarrett Cheery, he does freelance artwork.
Really?
And yeah, and he does a lot of stuff with inside the sport of wrestling. But he's always been, heavily involved in any of our design stuff.
Nice. All right. Shout out Jared Cheery. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Um,
New
was he
London boy.
yeah, was he a teammate of yours at Iowa too?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Um, we haven't really even talked much about your career. Um, I have a couple questions about it though.
Yeah.
This is a two-part question. The first one is which result at state was harder to handle, the sophomore or junior year? So sophomore
Mm,
year,
so, Sophomore
sophomore.
year, because I was convinced that I was going to be a four-time state champion again since I was 4 years old, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so, like, when it doesn't happen, it was like, devastating. I mean, that was
Mhm.
really tough. I remember that. That was not not fun.
How did you get paired with Clark in the first round anyway?
So that was the first knee surgery that I ever had, was like a couple weeks before that, or a few weeks before it, I think. And I
Wow.
ended up wrestling McDonough in the district finals, and lost to McDonough. Uh,
Wow.
um, I think that was probably the first matches back, and then was districts or something like that, or maybe conference. I can't remember. But then so that was back when a one and a two or whatever, you just wrestled somebody from another district, and
Yeah.
me and Tyler Clark ended up wrestling each other, which back then, I wasn't real happy about that.
Yeah.
But me and Tyler ended up being roommates for several years in college, and we're in each other's weddings and everything. So I'll forgive him for
I
beating
was
me now.
gonna
I
say,
love
that's
I
funny
love
how that
that kid.
works.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people in the whole world. I can tell you that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the second one is what what state title is maybe more satisfying, the first one as a freshman or the last one as a senior? I mean, two completely different situations, but so I'm just wondering if one sticks out more than
Freshman
the other. Really?
freshman year, I think, probably just because I wanted that for so long and whatnot. That when it became real, that was a really great feeling. Um,
Yeah.
and we won as a team. That was great. It was the first time that Westside had won a traditional state title, so that was great. To get to do that with some older guys too, that were really awesome
Yeah.
and important to me. And then by my senior year, it was just an expectation. So, like, not that it was not serious and that I'm diminishing it by any means,
Hmm.
but it was just what I expected of myself at that point. I mean, obviously you win it as a freshman, everything is that expectation moving forward. But I also had bigger goals at that point too that I was, approaching on.
Yeah. I didn't know if, coming up short as a sophomore and a junior made it a little more satisfying that, to come out on top as a senior, like you're expecting, but to actually have it, come to
Oh, it was
fruition.
good.
You
It was
know?
good. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
I was happy. I remember being that. But like I said, I wrestled the whole season hurt.
Mhm.
And that was, by that time it'd been 3 or 4 years straight of being hurt a lot. And, I knew I was done for the summer at that point, but I was excited to move on to what was next, in college and everything. And, that was, probably just, it was good, but I was happy to be done with it. I remember, being in a lot of pain that year.
Yeah.
Just trying to get through that tournament and being done with that season was important, but I was really happy when it was over. I know that.
Yeah. Did you sort of like, were you on like a pitch count at all? Like, we're gonna wrestle certain situations, or did you just run out there every time and said, "Screw it, I'm
I don't
hurt"?
remember, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'm sure I wrestled somewhat of a limited schedule, but
Yeah.
I don't really I don't really remember, I guess. I
Yeah.
remember I didn't practice a lot. Um,
Were you just on the Airdyne or what?
yeah, yeah.
Ugh.
It wasn't super great. That whole
Yeah.
year was challenging. Um, you know, and yeah, that was, the more I think about it, it was kind of difficult. And by that time, some of my older friends had already graduated and moved on.
Yeah.
So, it was a different group of us, but at the same time, you still had a handful of us, that were in that core group. So things were changing as well. At that time, I think we were all of us West Side guys were looking forward to college at that point. So,
Yeah.
and our expectations were so high. It was basically, yeah, I mean, like, we should be winning, junior Filas and Fila cadets, and we should be winning Fargo. Like,
Yeah.
how are you going to win that if you don't just win a state title?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Ask Derek St. John that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what. Just a heads up too. My phone is at like 4%, so if I do end
Okay.
up dying, that's why. But yeah, I mean, like, that's what you asked about that sophomore year. That's something I point out to kids all the time. I got freaking seventh place at the Iowa High School State Tournament. It was so embarrassing to me, like, in my mind. And that summer, I won Fargo in one style and was OW and finalist in the other. I'm like, guys, a few months changes everything for you.
Hmm.
Like, don't wrap everything up into one tournament. Like,
Yeah.
there's going to be another tournament. There's going to be a big tournament that's important, after that, type thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll try to get this one in quickly then. Of all the things you've accomplished in your wrestling career, you've done a lot as a coach, as a wrestler. Where does helping your brother win a state title, or sorry, place at state, where does him placing at state, helping him rank among kind of the achievements? I know that was a pretty big deal to you.
Yeah, that's funny. You started to ask that question, and that was where my head went instantly. Um, Probably the most important. I
Wow.
mean, I would say. I mean, like, there's just nothing like, getting to be there for one of your siblings, and especially your little brother. And my brother didn't wrestle. He was really good as a little kid, and then didn't wrestle for a long time. And so to see him then, come back into it and kind of get, one of the things that was important to him, that was awesome. I mean, and my older brother was his coach in the corner, and
Wow.
so that's at the top of the list. I mean, it really is. And
Hmm.
then, there's some other things that have happened along the way that, have just been unbelievable experiences. And, I've been lucky to coach some great kids. I've been lucky to be in this sport for so long. But I cried like a baby when my brother won a state medal. That I know for sure. That was really good. That
Yeah.
that's
How did
a
you?
good place for me to think about.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing to think about here that might be fun is your wife, um, Brooklyn, is
Yeah, she's
TJ Seabolt's sister.
yeah.
How did that
Uh,
happen?
we knew each other from when we were young. We used to work out with those guys, and down in Southern Iowa. And then TJ went to Pablo's as well. Everybody went to Pablo's.
Yeah.
Um, like, everybody went to Pablo's, and so we knew each other for forever. And then their parents split, when we got to college, and she moved up to Iowa City. I asked her out a couple times. She said no a couple times. I just
Wow.
stayed after her, and eventually got lucky, I guess.
Wow, she said no. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
good for you.
Anybody that knows my wife knows that she's doing what she wants to, period.
Yeah. Um,
I
you were also
I'd be
what?
remiss I'd be remiss not to say though, man, like I'm super lucky that
Yeah.
my wife is a Seabolt and, knows wrestling because like again, the same thing about the Carew Landscaping people and my wife. Like if these people didn't know wrestling and didn't care about it, and my wife like sees, my heart into this thing, like, and lets me be gone and chase this stuff, like without an army of people like that, and including my wife to be there for your kids, when I'm gone and whatnot, it'd be crazy not to acknowledge that.
Yeah. We'll end there
Yeah.
because I got one more thing though that maybe
Yeah.
if your phone dies, great. But I heard that your state semifinals, your junior year, you had McDonough on his back, but he like tapped out or something, and the ref stopped the match. Is
Yeah.
that what happened?
I gave up 2 penalty points. I don't remember exactly what
He gave up two
happened.
penalty points.
Yeah, but I think I lost by a point or two or a couple points, gave up a couple penalty points. I had a move that I did that was pretty infamous at that point. I think actually like my junior and senior year, I had to like show referees what the move was. I had to like give a demonstration at the state tournament.
Wow.
It was crazy. I mean, it was like a mixture between Nick Simmons, and Mark Perry, both of their like side headlock stuff. I'd worked with Mark a lot, and was a huge fan of Nick Simmons, who's one of my homies now. So that's kind
Hmm.
of funny. But yeah, we got into that position, um, and I got called for it. I mean, it was something that they pretty well made clear that it was going to be a judgment call, and it just didn't go my way. You know,
Wow.
Matt was a super tough competitor, and
Hmm.
he got the best of me those couple years in high school. And we've been friends for forever, and then teammates at Iowa. You know, it's funny though. Like I used to like care about like the high school thing, like when it happened, right? Like
Right.
when it happened, right then it was like something that bothered me, especially that match, maybe a little bit. But then at the same time, like after it, I was just like, whatever. Like I'm in college now, and like nobody cares about like if you won a state title or how many or anything like that. And
Yeah.
then over time, you don't even acknowledge like any of that, right? Like
Yeah.
it'd be crazy for me to be like, oh yeah, state when I was 14 or state when I
Hmm.
was 17, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, the other thing I wanted to throw in here real quick was you were on some teams in high school with some hammers, Nick and Nate
Oh yeah.
Moore, St. John, Evan Shaw, Grant Gambrell, like the list goes on and on. I'm just curious though, were any of them like on the surface, obviously they're tough SOBs, they wrestle and they were tough. Were any of them kind of like just kind of nerds? Or just like, man, he's just this guy. If they really knew him on the mat, he's a savage, but off the mat, man, he is something else. Like,
Um. No.
no,
The,
okay.
no. Most of these dudes were. They were what you saw. They were pretty hardcore.
Mhm.
Pretty hardcore all the time. I mean, it that was a very, very tough group of friends. And like we all rolled, pretty hard with each other.
Yeah.
And held each other to a very high standard all the time. Nobody was very soft
Yeah.
that I can think of, you know. Um, yeah, it was a unique group. I'm trying to think, even in college. In college, maybe there's some guys that are like that a
Mhm.
little bit, but even then, like a lot of times, man, that tough guy thing, it stays. It's part of you while you're competing, I guess.
Yeah.
Nowadays I could tell you so many dudes that are goofballs. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That are
Yeah.
nothing like what they were when they're competing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Which is a good thing.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. A very special thanks to my guest Dylan Carew for taking the time to sit down and chat with me. Cover art created and designed by Kristen Gill. Please feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also check me out on Twitter, Instagram, and my Facebook page to hear more of my content. And if you're interested, you can check out the video on YouTube. And don't forget, you can check out my website at letstalkwrestlingpodcast.my.canva.site. And as always, be sure to tune in to hear the next guest of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. Take care. See you next time.